vanished cities, empty cliff dwellings carved into sandstone canyon walls, a whole nation gone in 50 years. For 700 years, no one knew where they went. DNA finally answers. Stone towers rise from the canyon rim, their shadowed windows staring out across the high desert. In the silent alcoves of Mesa Verde, entire cities cling to the cliffs. Rows of masonry rooms, kivas sunk deep into the rock, ladders leading nowhere. Pueblo Bonito, the heart of Chaco Canyon, sprawls across the valley floor with more than 600 rooms and 5 stacked stories, a scale unmatched on the continent for centuries. Empty plazas, corridors wide enough for processions, and walls still bearing the fingerprints of their builders. The silence is unsettling, as if the land itself remembers the voices that once filled these spaces. Across dozens of miles, a network of roads, 30 feet wide and cut straight as a line across the desert, links Chaco's great houses to outlying settlements. Some roads stretch for 30 kilometers, engineered with a precision that follows the cardinal directions to within a single degree. Massive beams, each hauled over 50 miles from distant forests, support roofs that have long since collapsed. The labor behind these feats is almost unimaginable. At its height, this world was home to as many as 30,000 people, their lives woven through the canyons and mesas, their footprints pressed into the dust. But now, the rooms are vacant. The storerooms are bare. Pottery shards lie scattered where they fell. In just a few generations, every major settlement was deserted. No smoke rises from the hearths. No laughter echoes from the plazas. The only movement comes from wind and time. The question hangs in the air. What could drive a people to leave behind such monumental achievement, to abandon homes carved from stone and cities built with such purpose? The mystery is not just in what remains, but in what is missing. These structures are not ruins of defeat, but evidence of ambition, organization, and memory. The land holds the imprint of a society that once thrived here, a society that did not simply vanish, but whose story waits to be reclaimed. Population estimates for the Four Corners world have always carried a sense of AWE, but new analysis has forced a recalibration. At the peak of construction between 1080 and 1150 CE, the region supported as many as 22,000 to 25,000 people, families whose daily lives animated these vast canyons and stone cities. Each room, each kiva, each storeroom once held a purpose, a story, a voice. GIS density maps reveal how settlements clustered thickly around Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde, with a halo of smaller villages and farming hamlets radiating out into the high desert. The sheer density of habitation, mapped by the footprints of more than 150 known structures, points to a society deeply rooted in place, yet always adapting to the shifting edge of survival. The construction surge that shaped this landscape, monumental great houses, road corridors, cliff dwellings, unfolded over just a few generations. By 1150 CE, the last beams were hoisted into place at Pueblo Bonito. Afterward, the energy behind these projects began to falter. House size recalculations and new radiocarbon sequences show that by 1280, the population had contracted to fewer than 10,000. The numbers are stark. In less than a century, 3 out of every 4 people had left their homes. The rooms that once echoed with laughter and ritual now stood empty, their entrances sealed with stone and mud. This was not the story of a scattered handful, but of entire communities, thousands of lives swept up in a wave of migration. The evidence lies in the sudden vacancy rates visible in late-phase excavation layers, in the abandoned hearths, and in the settlement density maps that fade from dense clusters to isolated dots. These numbers sharpen the mystery. What forces could drive so many to depart almost at once, leaving behind such a legacy of order and ambition? The answer, as the next chapter reveals, is written in the land itself, in tree rings, pollen grains, and the thinning traces of maize and timber. But behind every statistic stands a family, a community, a people whose story is far from lost. Tree rings from ancient juniper and pine reveal a story of relentless drought. Between 1276 and 1299, the Southwest endured 23 years with barely enough rain to keep crops alive. Each year, the wood records thinner and thinner growth, a silent measure of water lost and hope stretched thin. Pollen samples from Chaco Canyon show the land shifting from woodland to grass and sage, and sediment cores tell of soil washing away, fields stripped bare by wind and flood. In the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde, maize kernels charred in ancient hearths carry a chemical signature. After 1240, their isotopes show plants struggling to find moisture, harvests shrinking to half their former yield. Communities responded with ingenuity and desperation. Timber beams, once hauled from forests over 50 miles away, become scarce in the archaeological record, and by the late 1200s, the effort to build and repair great houses falters. Defensive walls and stone towers appear along canyon rims and mesa edges, not as monuments, but as shields. Excavations reveal trauma in skeletons, forearms broken in defense, skulls marked by violence. Isotope studies in human teeth trace the movement of families, uprooted from old villages and resettled in more defensible cliffs. Under the pressure of drought, hunger, and conflict, staying was no longer possible. The land itself demanded movement, and the people listened. Stories ripple through Pueblo communities, Hopi, Zuni, Tewa, Picuris, carried in songs, winter tales, and the quiet words of elders. These are not legends, but inherited memory, mapping a journey from the stone cities of the north to the river valleys of the south. Hopi recount the emergence from cliff shadows, a long migration guided by ancestral markers, Chaco, Mesa Verde, the Rio Grande. Zuni remember the Kachina Walk, a movement from great houses to new fields. Tewa speak of leaving the white rock cliffs for lands where the sky opens wide. Each version names the same places, the same path, the same reason, not disappearance, but survival. For generations, these accounts were dismissed by outsiders as myth, their details overlooked by those who saw only ruins and silence. Yet the people who built these cities never called themselves Anasazi, a Navajo word imposed from without, now recognized as both inaccurate and offensive. Today, scholars and communities alike use Ancestral Puebloan, a name that honors living descendants and the continuity of culture. Oral histories hold more than memory. They preserve roots, reasons, and relationships, woven through language and ceremony. These voices have always remembered the truth. The migration was not an end, but a return to kin and homeland. The story now moves from memory to molecule as science begins to catch up with what Pueblo people have always known. In a quiet laboratory in Pullman, Washington, Brian Kemp turned to an unlikely witness: the bones of ancient turkeys. These birds had lived alongside ancestral Puebloan families for centuries, scratching in courtyards and roosting above storerooms. by isolating mitochondrial DNA from Turkey, remains across the Colorado Plateau and the Rio Grande. Kemp traced maternal lineages that mirrored human migration. Before 1280, plateau turkeys carried distinct genetic signatures. After that year, their lineages appeared hundreds of miles to the south. The haplogroups A, B, and C shifted in lockstep with the archaeological record of abandonment. Turkeys, carried as flocks by migrating families, left a genetic breadcrumb trail in the soil. This avian record offered the first biological proof that people moved en masse, bringing their animals, traditions, and stories with them. The clues pointed south, narrowing the trail for the next generation of scientists searching for a direct human link. On April 30th, 2025, a peer-reviewed study published in Nature brought the story full circle, led by the Pueblo Pueblo themselves, and with scientists Esker Villeslev, Michael Adler, and Thomas Pinotti serving as partners, not directors. The project compared the genomes of 16 ancient individuals from Pueblo burials, dated between 1300 and 1500 CE, to DNA from 13 living tribal members. Every step, from sample selection to data interpretation, unfolded under tribal oversight and with explicit community consent, a process designed to protect both heritage and sovereignty. The genetic results were unmistakable. Modern Pueblo people share nearly all their ancestry with the ancient Chacoans, the same builders whose fingerprints still press into the stone at Pueblo Bonito. Lieutenant Governor Craig Quancello stood before reporters and made it plain. This isn't just science. This is our living link. This is why we fight for these lands. The findings, now wielded in legal filings to halt oil and gas development near Chaco Canyon, serve not just as proof of ancestry, but as a shield for sacred ground. In this study, oral tradition and molecular evidence finally speak with one voice, affirming that the ancestral Puebloans never disappeared. They endure and they remember. The stones remain silent, but the descendants do not. Today, DNA and oral tradition stand side by side, proof that ancestral Puebloans never vanished. They endured. As oil interests eye sacred ground, understanding whose story this really is becomes urgent. History lives in those who still call this desert home.